Ako, sir, Fatima. Ang
Miss Fatima, kasi absent, tulo ka buok.
si Angel de la Cruz, sir. Tapos,
Murag wala pa ka-join si Kuan. Susto na ba susun? Susun.
wala pa po si
Wala pa si
Elias,
Susun
sir.
og si Magtulis. Na ba? Wala pa si Magtulis ka-join.
So we have De La Cruz, Suson, Magtulis, and si Ria May, bago ni gawas, nakagawas. Upat day ang kulang. Si Ria May. Sige, first name ni Ria May? Last name?
Percolo
Porcolio?
ata, sir.
Porcolio,
yes,
no?
sir.
Tama?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, we begin our discussions. We'll be talking about two topics now, quadratic equations and rational expressions. So, we'll begin our discussions with quadratic equations first. So, we'll be talking about solving quadratic equations. So, we know that the standard form of our quadratic equation is in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where the considerations where a and b are real numbers, provided that a should not be equal to 0. Kasi what will happen is, if a is equal to 0, then 0 times x squared, it becomes 0x squared. So in other words, dili na siya in the form of a second degree. So the equation becomes linear. Because what will be left behind is bx plus c, and that would be linear in form. The degree of our expression is already in the first degree, so it is now linear. So b and c could be 0 but not a. So how do we solve quadratic equations? So make sure that the first thing that we have to do is that we have to be sure that our quadratic equation will be in the form of will be in the standard form, and it should be in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Then make note of the values of the coefficients term a, b, and c. So a is the numerical coefficient of the variable x squared, and b is the numerical coefficient of the variable x. Okay, or it is in the first degree na variable. Kasi di man na siya permanently x squared, but it would be the nice thing to do that we will always be talking about variable, and is common na ginagamit nato sa algebra is the variable x. C is any constant, so it could be 0, it could be -1, basta any real number, and more likely constant or counting number siya, or pwede po siyang fraction depende sa given. And then we have now to careful substitute the values noted in step 2. Then to avoid needless error, use parentheses around each input into the formula, and then calculate and solve. That is, we'll be using the quadratic formula, and you are familiar with the quadratic formula in order to solve for the variable x.
Yes, sir.
So it is negative b plus minus the square root of the quantity b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Problem? Somebody is trying to say something? What would it be? So kinsa lang nabalik? Nala si De La Cruz? Nala si Ria May? Acknowledge if you're already here.
Si Angel
Susun?
de la Cruz, sir. Wala pa.
Okay. Guys, you are already here? So,
Yes.
it's only... Wala lagi. Isa may hinay gyud ang kuan signal karon ano man kamayos panahon man.
Balik na tayo.
Okay, so we'll begin with our you are familiar with our quadratic formula, correct? Solving quadratic equation using the quadratic formula.
Sorry, in this video, I'm going to do another example of solving a quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. And in this case, we're going to solve 3x squared plus 5x equals 7. One thing that's important before you use the quadratic formula is you always need one side of the equation to be
Madungog ra?
Hinay, sir.
Inay, sir.
Hinay siya, sir.
Hinay kayo, sir.
Hinay kaayo. Hala, yung ni Rugin, lili madungog. Madali aasaw ni pakuso gani. Wala kay speaker, Timich? Ayan,
Ato the speaker ni Papa, pag green.
Balik ulit.
Oh, okay.
Wala.
Hi. Ay, okay na lang. Total, kuan man, you are familiar with with the formula, and then we just simply follow the voice na lang, the writings in the na lang.
in this video, I'm going to do another example of solving a quadratic
Hinay gid siya, ate.
In this case, we're going to solve x squared plus 5x equals 7. Something that's important before you use the quadratic formula is you always need one side of the equation to be 0. So some people would just rush in and start trying to label A, B, and C, but be careful. The first thing I always do is we want one side to be 0. So in this case, we subtract 7 from both sides, which will give us 3x squared plus 5x minus 7 equals 0. And now I can read off my values. Because A is going to have the value positive 3, B is going to have the value positive 5, C is going to have the value negative 7. So when we go to fill in our quadratic formula, again, our negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a, when we do that, we'll end up getting our solutions as so negative of the b value, which is 5, plus or minus the square root. It says we take b and square it. So we'll have 5 squared minus 4 times our a value, which is 3, times our c value, which we said was negative 7. And then that's all going to be divided by 2 times a, or in this case, 2 times. So now it's just a matter, again, of simplifying down this expression. Just trying to so we have x equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root.
Good morning. Let's start now our session with teacher Isha. Teacher Isha is the one who will teach today. So we'll start with the prayer, teacher.
Ano na yun?
Anak na ako. Dito lang mga spesya. Ang ganda ng grupo
Hindi ko
niya.
na rin po sitingin. Bakit? Adali na lang ako.
Masa na siya. Kasi ako sinisip. Hindi mo na rin. Sipat ang datang.
Okay, so good morning. We will start our session now with
Bibit kung siguro kung ako rin ng doktor, nakaroon ng vaccine. Patawag lang kung ako pa rin ng vaccine.
Unsa na siya?
Okay na.
Unsa na ikaw nagsot anak?
Dili sila. Oh,
Ilahan lang answer.
kuha na YouTube.
Um,
Sir, nakamute ka po.
Excuse me, sir. Sir, dili ka madunggan, sir.
Tara. Okay na?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hindi lagi makita nga kung ang PowerPoint lagi
Share screen ako.
Okay na?
Sana, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sana.
Di mo maklaro ang... Okay na ang PowerPoint presentation?
Wala, sir.
Black siya, sir.
Wala siya. Black lang, sir.
I-click imong PowerPoint. Kana, naka-minimize, i-minimize kana. Kani. Kana. Makita na mo, makita pud nila.
Okay ka na, Lala?
Yes, sir. Naana.
Yes, sir.
Okay, questions with how to solve our quadratic equation using quadratic formula? Any question?
None, sir.
Okay. So we'll be able now to, using the quadratic formula, then we'll be able to determine the nature of our roots, or we call that one as the solution of our quadratic equation. So, using the discriminant b squared minus 4ac, so we'll be able to determine that if the value of b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0, or it means it is positive, then we'll be able to note that the nature of our roots is two real numbers. Okay, or it is a real number. So it means to say, we could be able to have the whole numbers as its solution to our quadratic equation for that variable. And if b squared is equal to, if the discriminant b squared minus 4ac is equal to 0, then we'll be able to have a one real root. In this case, nganong 0 man, nga dapat 4 man, wala ba? Di ba? Dapat 4. Okay? Dili siya 0. It's my mistake. The real root of this one is 4 because we will be able to factor this one as x squared, x minus 4 quantity squared. So therefore, the root of our is not 0 because if we try to replace 0 here, ato na lang siyang i-check ha. Di ay kay naka... Naka-picture man na ini. Dili na, sorry. Sige. So, that's my mistake that it is not 0 ang root niya, kundi 4. Okay? So, one real root lang na if the discriminant is equal to 0. Is equal to 0. And if the discriminant is less than 0, it means to say it is negative, then we will have our greater than 0 and it is a perfect square ang number 1 na to, na discriminant. Okay, kung perfect square, halimbawa 121, it is a perfect square that is 11 squared, so therefore we could have two real roots. And then sa second one, if it is equal to 0, exactly ang atong discriminant, then we'll have one real root. And in this case, sa ato ang table, sayop ang yang root nga gihatag because it is 0 but it should be equal to 4. Then if the discriminant is less than 0, then we have two complex roots. So it means to say complex siya because the discriminant will be under our square root sa atong quadratic formula will be negative. So we could not get a real solution to it because we do not have a value for a negative square root or a square root of a negative number, I should say. Correct? So if the discriminant is greater than 0 but not a perfect square number, then we'll be able to have two irrational roots. So that is how we use our discriminant. So you could check that if your solution, if the solution that you have is, kung gusto ninyo ma-check if your solution is two real roots, then you will be able to, you could check that one by using your discriminant. Then partially you are already correct with that one because we know how to check our solution to our quadratic equation. We simply try to replace the value that we get to our original equation. And then if the equation is true, then therefore our solution is correct. Question about the discriminant? Then we'll go now to our equation reducible to quadratic form.
आज का हमारा टॉपिक है इक्वेशन रिड्यूसिबल टू क्वाड्रेटिक फॉर्म टाइप नंबर 1 सॉल्यूशन ऑफ 4 डिग्री इक्वेशन पर
Super well.
हमें इस इक्वेशन में इस तरह सब्स्टिट्यूशन करनी है जिससे हमें क्वाड्रेटिक इक्वेशन हासिल हो। तो हम x स्क्वायर इज इक्वल टू y को दी गई इक्वेशन में सब्स्टिट्यूट करेंगे जिससे ये कुछ यूं बन जाएगी ay स्क्वायर प्लस by प्लस c इज इक्वल टू 0। तो ये एक सिंपल क्वाड्रेटिक इक्वेशन है और इसमें y की जगह हम कोई भी वेरिएबल इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं। एक मिसाल की मदद से समझते हैं। फर्ज करें हमारी इक्वेशन x4 minus 30x square plus 36 is equal to 0 है। तो हम सबसे पहले सब्स्टिट्यूशन को देखेंगे। इक्वेशन में भी हम x square is equal to y को भी सब्स्टिट्यूट करेंगे। अब सब्स्टिट्यूशन को इक्वेशन में पुट करेंगे जिससे y square minus 13y plus 36 is equal to 0 हासिल होगा जो कि एक सिंपल क्वाड्रेटिक इक्वेशन है। इस इक्वेशन को y square minus 9y minus 4y plus 36 is equal to 0 में फैक्टराइज किया जा सकता है जिसको मजीद हल करने से ये इक्वेशन कुछ यूं बन जाएगी y into y minus 9 minus 4 into y minus 9 is equal to 0। अब हम y minus 4 और y minus 9 के साथ अलग-अलग 0 को लिखेंगे जिससे हमें y साइड पर y minus 4 is equal to 0 हासिल होगा और दाईं साइड पर y minus 9 is equal to 0 हासिल होगा। y साइड पर मौजूद y minus 4 is equal to 0 को सॉल्व करने से हमें y की वैल्यू 4 हासिल होगी और दाईं साइड पर मौजूद y minus 9 is equal to 0 को सॉल्व करने से हमें y की वैल्यू 9 हासिल होगी। अब जब हमें y की दो पॉसिबल वैल्यूज हासिल हो गई तो y की जगह x के पुट कर लें जिससे x स्क्वायर इज इक्वल टू 4 और x स्क्वायर इज इक्वल टू 9 हासिल होगा। दोनों इक्वेशंस का स्क्वायर रूट लेंगे। स्क्वायर रूट लेने से हमें ये इक्वेशन हासिल होंगी। जब हम इन इक्वेशंस को सॉल्व करेंगे तो हमें x इज इक्वल टू प्लस माइनस 2 और x इज इक्वल टू प्लस माइनस 3 दो वैल्यूज हासिल होंगी। याद रखिए जब भी हम स्क्वायर रूट इस्तेमाल करें तो जवाब में प्लस माइनस दोनों टर्म्स आती है तो प्लस माइनस 2 और प्लस माइनस 3 हमारा सोल्यूशन सेट है।
Eh? What? Tanawa, dili naman. Naglibot na nung kuhaan ni Den. Uy, sorry, President. Ay, nag-algebra naman ay ko sa inyo, pastil. Sorry, gayod kayo. Kalali na for a while. Nalangan naman na yun. Ay, po! Samok ba? Bantog, wa mo'y tingog-tingog. Wa mo po mo nag-ingon nga dili day. Oh my goodness. Sorry, gayo. Di mo na ini. The class that I have now is math in a modern world, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Kaya si Bro, bantog raw. Wa mo'y tingog-tingog. Adaan po din naman tingog. Okay, sorry. So, taas-taas na naman tag-oras yun na 40 minutes na pastilan. Dili ba? So, di ba na ini, data management, data karon. We are now on our statistics. So, bear with me. And wala nakalimot naman na ko nga math in the modern world man na ini. So if we will be talking about data management, that is what we call as managing the data that we collected. So a data is a collection of facts such as numbers, words, measurements, observations, or just descriptions of things. So data management involves collecting, importante storing, organizing, protecting, verifying, and processing essential data and making it available to your organization depending on where organization you belong. So, side na tana. So, halimbawa, grades, pwede ni mo i-collect as data, waist size, age, and many things that you would like, and then you could organize that one so that pag tanaw na to sa number, there will be, or sa data, we could just simply try to make an inference out of it. Okay? So we'll be able to make a decision clear based on the data. So collecting data and organizing data can be collected in many ways. So the simplest way is direct observation. So halimbawa, wa kay lingaw, adto ka sa kanto, ihap ra ka sakyanan og pilay na nilabay. So that would be one, that would be by observation. And then if you want to find how many cars pass by a certain point on the road in 10 minutes interval, so ayan, you will have to stand on near the road and then count cars and then up until 10 minutes passed. Okay, or we could collect data by doing a survey. So, common na itong survey is census. Okay? But if we'll be talking about census, then we'll be talking about the whole population. The only difference between a survey and a census, although a census is a survey on the whole population, but when we say survey, it does not necessarily mean that it would be the whole population. So, pag may tag-census, muna dapat tanan tao sa, halimbawa, mag-census ang Bayugan City, so tanan tao sa Bayugan City. So you can ask everyone, halimbawa, there will be 120 people in your local football club. So you could ask everyone, and that is what we call as a census. So if you could just simply try to choose people that are there in that afternoon, so that is what we call as a sample. Okay, a census is accurate but hard to do. A sample is not accurate but maybe good enough, and it is a lot easier. So that is why kung maghimo tawag research, we will always take the sample rather than we take the census. Kaya kung magkuha tawag, halimbawa, if we will have now your research, you will have to, your respondents will be the students of PNU from from first year to fourth year. So it would be hard for us to do that one because time scheduling, okay, and then it will take a lot of time. So that is why it is more comfortable that we'll have to take only a sample rather than the whole population. So when we conduct research about a group of people, it's really possible to collect data from every person in that group. So instead, we select a sample. So here are the most common method of determining the sample. Sampling method that we could use will be random. So it is only by chance. Okay? But parang atong sample is dili siya bias in nature. So that is why when we have a random sampling, we really have to put that one by chance. So it means to say dapat equal ang chances sa member sa population. Okay? Dili lang kay ikaw ang magbuot. Okay? So it is really by chance, and then we should have to follow the random method of sampling. And that random method of sampling will be, you could assign numbers to each of the individual in that population, and then you draw by lot or fishbowl technique. You draw a number from the box. Then if that would be the number, if that one will be come out in your selection, then you go to the list kung kinsa ang number 1. Okay, so yun na lang siya pag gamit. And then ang systematic is we always have to follow the rule according to formula. And the formula will be number of population divided by the sample that you would like to take from the population. So halimbawa, ang population is butang na to, first year, so there will be 40, 50 times 6, 300. So 300, and we would like to take 30 out of it. So 300 divided by 30. So we could now have the 10. So in our list, alphabetical listing, every 10 person that is listed in our list will be our sample. That is what we call as the systematic. Okay? And then ang stratified is, we know our first year by section, so that you will be able to note that each section will be represented equally in the so we will use the stratified random sampling para equal representation. So we want 30, so there are 6 sections, so therefore each of the each section must have at least 5 representatives as part of the sample. So, dito na ka mupili sa kada section og 5. So, it's up to you now to choose, but your choosing must still be random. Okay? All of the systematic or of the sampling method that we'll have to use will always result to random sampling. Okay? Ang stratified lang is we'll just simply try to get an equal representation in each of the subgroupings that we have. Or we call that one as the strata. Okay? In every subgroup. So halimbawa, from first year to fourth year, so there will be 300, 1,200. So accordingly, each of the first, kung dili equal ang population, so we'll just simply try to get the percentage out of it. So pila dapat kada year level, and then kada year level po every section nga na, kung gusto ko nga equal representation, then still you will have to use the stratified random sampling. So mora na ang tulong common method na to para sa ano, and these are all probability sampling siya tanan. Okay? Common nga sampling method nga ginagamit for probability sampling. Okay, so we can now have our examples of how to identify the sampling method used. So, naturalmente, if it is an exit poll is taken to every 10th voter, so we call that one a systematic. Kanang election time, gusto ka mag-survey after nagbutan ang tao. So, kung gusto kang systematic, kada na po katao mo gawa sa polling precinct, di mo siyang interview kung siya iyang ano, and then tally the data that you have. Then you have your partial result of who win. But normally it does not necessarily mean nga sa imong date, sa imong collect sa imong data nga gikuha labi nang usa ra ka presento ang imong gibasihan. It does not mean that the result will be true to the whole. It will be true sa ang imong result to the polling precinct nga imong tagag survey. Okay, kung halimbawa ang nidaog si Lini para na nga precinct, so maybe it would be true for that precinct only but not for the whole population. Okay, next, in a statewide survey, 5 countries are randomly chosen and 100 people are randomly chosen from each country. So normally that is what we call as stratified. Okay? Okay, we are now having the subgroups, and each the subgroupings that we have is each country. Okay, and the student in a class write their names on a strips of paper and put them in a hat. The teacher draws 5 names. So we call that one as random. So random ang tawag ana. Okay, kung mag-choose ta sa ano siya. But take note nga ang ato ang pagpili sa 100 people sa country, stratified to siya, pero ang pagkuha na ginato really sa sample is we result to random sampling. Although ang strategy nga itong gigamit so that we can identify how many for each country, stratified siya.
So, kibali, sir, ang stratified is mura siya, gikaduha siya sala.
Oo. Bisan ng systematic, pwede siya random gyapon ang imong kuan. Okay, para dili siya mayon halimbawa to systematic, halimbawa 100 mo kuha ta og 20. So 100 divided by 20 is 5. So therefore every fifth in the list. Pero gusto ka nga dili siya bias kay basin kay ikaw ang nagbuhat sa list. Nga masahin man kada ano kung sa resulta, so ang imong ipanglista kadto ra imong silingan nga dool para di ka mulakaw og layo. So para marandam ang imong systematic, ang result niya is you will have always to have a random start. So para dili bias. So we say ngita ka sa imong friend or mag-list ka og 1 to 10 nga number. So you pick one number out of 10. So if what will come out is 6, so you begin with 6. Then after every 6, you will count 5. So 6 to 11. So mo na yung random start if we will be having our systematic in the listing. Okay, so dili ta magsugod sa 5. Although we follow the systematic sampling, pero wala na to ang ato ang pag-start sa identifying the member of our respondents. So what should we do is we have a random start. So not necessarily that we will always begin with 5, kay 100 divided by 20 is 5, and then we count every fifth, then until we get 20. Correct? So kung 6, mulapas man siya, so pag mulapas, cycle lang siya, balik ka dito sa 1. Okay, kung kulangan. So halimbawa, pag abot na to kay, I think it will be 96. So, ikay 96, count mo, 1, 2, 3, 4, wala may 101, so balik ka dito sa 1. So, ganun lang yan. So, halimbawa, imong random start is 27. So, it's either you will have 27 plus 5, 32, then 37, then paglapas mo 100, you go back to 1. Or if you do not want to go back to 1, you could have from 37, from 27, you could count up by 5 na po. So 1 backwards. And it would still be the same. Okay, so here are some of the common data collection method. Survey, you are familiar with that one. Case study. Okay, ang case study is taas-taas siya nga panahon kay dili man ka pwedeng it involves observation and take down notes sa case study. Although you could have simple also some questions of the respondents, but more likely, ang case study is more likely observation yun siya. Okay? Mura siya, og sa ato pa lang, kung television show pa na siya is real TV, di ba? Yun nila, kanang muuban gid ka sa one. Although not necessarily that you will have to interpret the daily activity of the individual or of the group, but you could live within that community and just simply observe accordingly kung unsay gusto nimong obserbaran sa imuhang respondents. Interview, you are familiar with this one, although if it would be in a research, so para dili malangan is you will have your guide questions. Kumbaga, you already listed the questions. And then not necessarily that you will have to follow your guide questions into 2. Because some of your interview is dili man nato limitahan mo istorya ang atong gi-interview according to what our question. So if the response of our respondents during the interview is not clear, you could make your follow-up question. So para maklaro nimo kung say gusto niya i-pasabot. So mora na dapat atong timanan. And then observation, ang importante is when we observe, we do not want to forget something that is very important. So it would be important that in our observation is we have to take down notes. Okay, group assessment. Pareha siya sa case study, although in a group assessment is more likely you will have a questionnaire here. Okay, portfolio reviews, data na daan siya. Kaya halimbawa, portfolio nga gihimo sa mga estudyante, so i-collect lang nimo siya, ikaw nimo tan-aw according sa gusto nimo tan-awon sa portfolio sa individual o sa group, for each of the individual in the group nga imong under your study, or that would be the respondents of your research. Testimony is recorded siya, ang importante ani is records, testimonial, kanang halimbawa, testimony of single parents, and then next is common data collection is test or questionnaire. You could also have the photographs, videotapes, and slides, and more likely, labi na og historical research ang ato ang himuon. So, to support your data nga nakuha according to your interview, you could also use the photographs to have the support. Labi na og bang dili na wala na diha ang mga individual nga kay more likely kung history wala rin siya. So we have to go back to a certain time, but we will not know anything of it, and then mas maayo nga katong mga buhi pa may atong may interview, but mas maayo nga it will be supported by it's either old mga photographs or videotapes ng mga karaan kay karon kuha naman. Murag dili na maglisod og trace sa history nato kay more likely they are already online. So available na halos kasagaran. Kay diaries sa unang panahon pwede po ni siya kung historical ang atong buhaton. Journal, logs, kay available pa man ang uban labi na sa mga karaan ng mga data. Document review and analysis. Okay, so mga old documents. Okay. Halimbawa, lista sa mga tao. Or if you could remember some of the kana bang mga Pilipino guys sa una nga gagmay niya gipa-adapt to sa laing nasod ni balik kay gusto nila i-trace ang ilang di ba ang ginabuhat nila is more likely is ang they go to records. You will have the document review asa dapit mag-interview sa mga tao, adto sa mga karaan nga tao, and then tanawon og sa mga nakaila, or you could go to the records in the municipality. Kung hangtod ba karon napabagyapon siya ani nga lugar. Kung naman gali siya ani nga lugar, asa na siya dapat makita? Because document, we could have that document. Or collection of data from the expert or from your peer. Okay, so it could also be done. Data organization. Okay, it is just simply a process of organizing collected factual material commonly accepted in the scientific community as necessary to validate research finding. And how do we organize our data? So there are 3 common ways. We have the textual presentation. Textual, ang common na to is reports. So halimbawa, this one. The Philippine Stock Exchange Composite Index last 799, and this would be this one in our business news, correct? Or news report sana. So newspaper report, that would be a textual presentation of the data. Next one is tabular presentation. Okay, we organize our data by putting that one into a table. Not necessarily common table nga ito makita. Table means, so kana bang naka-box siya. na makita nimo. So ina na siya. That would be this is a good example of our tabular presentation. Okay? Ang kulang lang ani akong table dahil is wala siyang source. So dapat under your table is nakabutang ang source. So in this case, because this one is a currency exchange, United or US dollars, in other words, country, in terms of $1 is equal to, in our currency, in our denomination, 50.78. Okay, or around 50.79, more likely. So that's the current exchange. So dapat nakabutang diri source, more likely this comes from BSP, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. BSP ba? Bangko Sentral, no? Kay dili naman ta Central Bank of the Philippines, BSP nga. Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Okay? So dili kalimtan ang source ha. Kay basi mo yung kakaroon diri currency exchange unya. Dili mo to ang mga tao, nganong dili man mo to nga mao man ni, ngano man pagtan-aw nila sa source ang imong nakabutang diha DepEd National. Di ba? So dili more likely it would be, although accurate mo ang data, but more likely dili mo to ang mga tao nga nakabasa because dino nga ang DepEd is not the one in ang Department of Education is not the agency that is assigned to have the updates of the currency exchange, but it is our Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Graphical presentation. So we know graphs should be of the different kind. So the first type of graph that we will have is bar graph, and that is the example that we have. Although it will be from a tabular presentation, then the tabular presentation could also be changed to graph. So karon bar graph na ang nahitabo. Okay? So grades nimo from first grading to fourth grading. And then more likely, wala siya subject, so it could be the average grade na siya. Diba? Average grade nimo in the first grading, then second, third, and fourth. Kaya there are different subjects man. So, pero specific na nimo quarter unsa nga subject, so it could be you could put that one as part of your data. Then sunod is pie graph or circular graph. Okay. So ang atong timan-an sa atong circular graph is that pero kay dili naman problema kay maka-create naman tani kay naa naman tay app para sa pag-graph. I-input ra nimo ang data, then automatically the app will show depending on unsa imong gipili, unsa nga graph ang imong gusto i-present. Himuon. So automatic nga ang mahimuan na is corresponding kung unsa nga percentage ang makita diri or unsa kadako ang imong in relation to the whole total of your household expenses is balance ang imong circle. Kung baga equal ang representation. Kung baga, og mayong kag 50%, dapat katunga gid siya sa imong circle or sa imong pie. Kaya basi kung kita ay maghimo, mayon ta nga 1/4 pero dili siya 1/4 ang tanaw. 25% kung baga. But according sa mayon ta nga okay na kay total na may number. So it should not be that way. So dapat equal ang representation in circular graph. Kung dako siya nga part, so dapat dako gid siya corresponding sa iyang number nga naa. Pero dili naman na problema lagi sa giuna nako tungod kay na naman tayo app nga mobuhat og graph na to. Depende na kung unsay gusto nato nga kind graph nga himuon. Common is line graph, okay? Or line chart that we have. Next is histogram. Pareha siya og bar graph but it is a connected bar graph. That's the difference of the histogram. Okay? Connected bars. And then next one is our cumulative frequency.
Welcome to another video from mathsvision.net. The frequency graphs enable us to estimate averages of specific medians given the set data. To begin with, we make a table, first starting with our data labels. In this example, we'll be using the height of the sunflowers plotted in a small field. As you can see, our sunflowers grew from somewhere below 49 centimeters all the way to 150 centimeters. So we've taken our data and divided it into 11 columns, dividing the heights into 9 centimeter groups. Most sunflowers are less than 49 centimeters, tallest and less than 150 centimeters. Next row below, we write our frequency. That is how many plant heights along each category of 9 centimeter ranges. This has been done for us here. After that, we have our next row in which we total up the frequencies so far. So, starting with 11 as our first result, the next box will be the total of the previous box plus the frequency of that column. So, 11 from before plus the 13 above in the 50 to 59 range, which makes 24. And then we have 24 from before plus 18 above it, which is 42. Then 42 plus 22, which makes 64, and so on until our row is complete with our cumulative frequencies. Now, before we can plot our graph, we need our upper class boundaries. The upper class boundary is the highest number each range can go to. So, for our 0 to 49 range, the highest number it can reach is 49 centimeters. The next, 59, the next 69, and so on to our final 150 centimeter final category. Now we're ready to plot our graph. As you can see here, I've used the upper class boundaries as our x-axis and the results from our cumulative frequency as the y-axis. The next step is to plot the results of each of our categories, beginning with our 0 to 49 count at 11, 59s at 24, 69s at 42, and so on until we have all our frequencies plotted on the graph. From our marks, we can now draw a smooth curve through our points. Remember, it does not have to intersect each point. Rather, you should give a roughly accurate curve, which will often take the form of a loose S-sort shape. From our line, we may be asked to find the median. Median, as we know, is the middle value of our data set. To find this, we take our total cumulative frequency. For example, that's 306, and divide by 2 to get 153. Find 153 on our y-axis, and using a straight line, find the point at which it intercepts the line, and draw a line from that straight down to our x-axis, giving us the value 96 centimeters. So we know our median value is 96 centimeters. Now we've found our median, we can also find out our quartiles. We have two quartiles. A lower quartile, which is a quarter of our total cumulative frequency, and an upper quartile, 3/4 of our total cumulative frequency. We know our total cumulative frequency is 306, and 1/4 of that is 76.5. Likewise, if our lower quartile is 3/4 of 306 total, 76.5 times 3 will give us our upper quartile of 229.5. Like we did with the median, take our lower quartile on the y-axis and draw a line to meet the slope and find our x-axis result. So, 76.5, we find out at the lower quartile it'll be around 77 centimeters. Do the same for our upper quartile of 229 centimeters. We get our height of 115 centimeters. Now we have our upper quartile and lower quartile values. Work out our interquartile range. In other words, we can work out the range of heights in the middle 50% of our sunflowers. The equation is simple. We take our upper quartile, 115 centimeters, and take our lower quartile, so 77 centimeters, and we get our result of 38 centimeters. This means that our middle 50% of the sunflower heights are at the most 38 centimeters different in height. Thanks for watching, and as ever, you can subscribe our channel, Vision World TV, or for more maths help, go to mathsrevision.net.
Questions about cumulative frequency? Determining also the upper quartile, lower quartile, and then the interquartile range. So ang lower quartile, it means to say quarts. So it means to say data is subdivided into 4. So it means to say the lower quartile will be the boundary between the 3/4 of the size of the population, and then that would be the determination of that number, that this would be the boundary point, kung baga. Kung baga, umiyon ta 100 ang imuhang data, so it would be the 25th data that we have. So unsa na siya nga number, wala siya ang ato ang. But normally in that kind of, if we have to determine that one in our cumulative frequency offering, determining the number, we see to it that the data is already arranged from lowest number to the highest number. So ay pata mo determine sa ato ang lower quartile. But if we have to use the formula, not necessarily that we have to arrange the number, because we could use the formula. Or if you have already the cumulative frequency, but in that case is na-organize na nato atong data pod noon. So dali na siya i-determine. So we have another way of presenting our data, and that could be used by the box plot. So ang box plot na to is, we have already this one. Okay? So sa mga ito pag-determine, ang atong box plot is, ang tawag sa duha na to ka tail is, we call that one as the whisker. The number 1 is the minimum value that we have, and then the 5 is the maximum value. So we simply have the listing of our numbers on that line. Although ang bulk sa ato ang data is makita lang siya sa ato ang box. Where number 2 is, we call that one as the lower quartile, or that would be the, sa giyon na to is the 25th data or score that we could have on that when the scores of our data is already been arranged from highest to lowest. And then number 3 is the median. Number 3, we call that one as Q2. And then we have the upper quartile will be that number 4, and then that would be the maximum value. More likely, that's how we determine our box plot. So ang ato ang box is the location, although mayroon nga, that's the 50% of the data is more likely, sir, dapat nasa tunga sa box. Okay? We know that kay number man atong gibasihan, so we know that the location of that number, not necessarily that it would be on that ano siya, kanang in the center really. Although it would be the median. Okay? Kay dili man gud ang pag-count nato, kay namay usay magbalik-balik ra ang number, di ba, sa ato ang data. So mo nang dili nato gid necessarily makita nga sa center sa atong box ang median. Okay? But that is how we locate our ano siya. Or how do we determine our information from the box plot. Now we will be going to our measures of central tendency, because that's part of our data management or data collection. Part of that one is when we organize our data so that we could present that one is one way of presenting our data is through the measures of central tendency. And there are 3 measures of central tendency. We have the mean, median, and mode. So, what is the mean? Common language na itong ginagamit para sa mean is we call that one as the average. Okay? And I know you are familiar with how to compute the average, correct? Kung na kay halimbawa scores, i-add nimo tanang scores, i-divide og pila ka scores. And that's already what we call as the mean. Sa ato ang libro ang nakasulat ana is mu. Greek letter siya nga mu. Mura siya og M nga lahi pagkasulat. Mura siya U nga murag M. Di lang na ito maklaro. And that's what we call as the mean. Kung sample mean, we call that one as the X bar. X nga na bar sa ibabaw. Okay, that is some of the characteristics that we could observe in our mean. Okay, so we'll be able to note that when we calculate our mean, it involves every score in our distribution. So changing the value of any score will change the value of the mean. Diba? We know that one because we observe nga we will try to compare our average with our classmates. Sus, kung 95 lang ko, kaya niya 94 naman, so ako nung talay first. Di ba yun na siya? Kaya kung midako lang imong isa ka subject na dapat sa imong math, or may kag naparihal unta na kung grado niya, murag ako naging first unta na, di ba? We could observe that one. Because if we change one value of the number that we have in our data, normally it will also change the mean. And then one thing also is that if a constant value is added to every score in the distribution, okay, kung mag-add taog 5, we will be able also to note that the mean also increases by 5. That's how we observe. Or if we multiply every value of our data by 2, then we will be also observe that we could also observe that the mean result is also multiplied by the same constant. Okay? Okay, although the mean is the most commonly used measure of central tendency, there are situations where the mean does not provide a good representative value. And there are situations where cannot compute the mean at all. So halimbawa is when a distribution contains a few extreme scores in every skewed. So halimbawa na lang is, a good example of this one is, kanang dali na to makita ba nga, dili yun siya reliable ang mean. Kaya halimbawa, in a gasoline station, gasoline boy has a monthly salary of, butang na to, 6,000. Unya na sila yung manager, tungod kay manager maumay mag-supervise na tanan, manager caser. So gitagaan og sweldo sa tag-iya og taas-taas. More likely kay caser pa siya, so professional. So gitagaan siya og 20,000 nga monthly salary. So halimbawa na 5 ka tawag nyo na 5 ka trabahante or 4 ka trabahante sa gasoline station or gasoline boy, nag 6,000, 24 plus 20, 44 divided by 5. So that will be around 8,800. Oh no, 44, yeah, 8,800. So would it be a reliable source? Uy, nakuha sweldo nila, uy. So, dili ta ni Sarli moingon nga reliable permanent ang mean. Labi na og kana bang naay extreme value nga makita. So, in order to get reliable information of that mean, it's either you will have to remove the extreme value. Kumbaga katubang makaapekto gyud og maayo sa ato ang kumpol nga mga score dapat siya i-remove. Pwede siya. Okay? We just simply have to note that one in our data nga na isa nga gi-remove tungod kay extreme value na siya. nga maka-affect yun sa ato ang analysis atong data. Muna isa. When the data are also ay nominal, it is very impossible to compute. I mean, what do you mean by nominal? Nominal is halimbawa, ang data na to is in terms of description lang siya. Halimbawa, religion. How do we get the average or what would be the representative religion that we could have in our, or denomination? Kaya we know ang religion is Christianity man tatalan, di ba? So ang denomination lang nato naglaylay. So we have Roman Catholic, Iglesia ni Cristo, Seventh-day Adventist, Baptist, ang bisan gali ang Baptist or ang Pentecostal is naggalay-lahi na og nalapod sila dagan ay fundamentalist. Okay? So yun ana. So it would be very hard for us to determine the mean of that So what we could just simply try to do is kung kinsa ang daghan, kung baga mo na himo na to amin. Kung baga pag mo yun ta karon nga unsa may representative color for the day. So what should we do is we have to look at the color kung unsay daghan mo na atong ingon karon nga So that's the representative. Pero dili na siya actually computing of the mean, and we call that one, if it is that kind of data that we have, we call that one as the mode. Mas dali makuha kung mode ang atong gamiton. Kaya ang mode na to is more likely kung kinsay daghan mo na ang kung unsay uso mo na ang representative. Next, the median is the middle score when the scores are already arranged from highest to lowest. So kung baga, kung na kay 20 ka score, so the middle score are 2, the 10th and the 11th value. Correct, kung 20 ka scores ang naka-arrange, so 10th and 11, so add the 2 divided by 2, and that's the median. Kung 19 na siya, so therefore ang tunga-tunga ana is ang ika-10. Kaya naman, we have 9 below and 9 above. 19 man, di ba? 19. So, 9 plus 9, 18. Then, ang sintro is the 10th value. So, muna automatically ang median. Provided that we already arrange the scores from highest to lowest. Or we call that one as the scores are already in array. In array. Okay? That's how we get our median. Usually, the median can be found in a simple counting procedure. So that is what I have told you kanina. Okay? The mode is defined as the most frequently occurring category or score in a distribution. So muna kung iyon, kung isay daghan mo na kung unsay uso mo ay daghan na tumakita, that is why we call that one sometimes as the mode as the fashion. Kaya di ba pag fashion or fashionable siya, unsay uso, may ito makita. Sa una, pag uso sa una, di wala naman mo kaabot siguro, but I think you are familiar with the bell bottom. Katubang ang mga cartoonist is bukhad kayo ang nasa atong tiilan. We call that one as bell bottom. Pero karon is ang uso is skinny or street cut na siya. Wala na ito mauso itong mga bill bottom sa una. Uso naman gay karon ang joggers. Kana bang ipit na gay ang imong kuandiri sa ubos. Nanay garter. So yun na siya, jogger pants. Mo lang uso. Pero karon ang depende na karon ang passion. Kaya daghan na mugod kayo ang siya, accepted ng fashionable. Depende sa kinsay mo. Depende na kung kinsay mo sunod nga uso. And then we have the central tendency and the shape of the distribution. Because the mean, the median, and the mode are measuring central tendency, so the three measures are often systematically related to each other. So, in a symmetrical distribution, kita unsay symmetry, nakita lang mo bill shape nga is as ito. Niya na lang makita man. Dagan. So symmetrical siya. So bell shape, if you are familiar with the curve in our normal distribution. So kung dili bias ang atong data, so makita gid nato ang ato ang the measure of central tendency could also be found in the center of our curve. Ayan. So in a symmetrical distribution, for example, the mean, the median, and the mode will always be equal. So in a symmetrical distribution, we have only one mode on that category. So the mode, the mean, the median will have all the same value. Pag symmetrical ang distribution. Okay, in a skew distribution, the mode will be located at the peak of one side of the mean. Usually will be displaced towards the tail of the other side. So kung asa pa doon ang tail, dito na mo makita ang mode. So ato na ipakita daan yun ang ato ang ayan, kala mo na gitawag na nga curve. Although in this category, dapat normal distribution na to, dapat perfect bell ni siya. Karon is dili man siya perfect. So kung makita nato siya, asa man pa doon ang tail. So ang atong tail is more likely diri siya pa doon sa atong right. So ang atong mode pod more likely kung mao ni atong mean nasa sentro, ang atong mode nasa diri sa right towards the tail. Muna akong giingon nga bot pasabot sa location sa ato ang mode in our curve o sa ato ang distribution. And then the median is usually located between the mean and the mode. So normally kung ang mean nato nasa left o niya ang atong mode nasa right, so more likely ang median is always in between the two. Okay? So we have now the measure of our dispersion, or we call that one as also measures of variability. And common measures of variability is we have the variance, standard deviation, variance and standard deviation. There are three main measures of dispersion, and then ang usable lang yun nato maayo is variance, standard deviation. Semi-interquartile range could also be utilized depending on what data do you have. Okay, so that would be the three. So the range is simply defined as the difference between the largest score and the smallest score in the set of data. So halimbawa, we have the data set of 4, 8, 1, 6, 6, 6, 9, 3, 6, 9. Highest score is 9, lowest score is 1. So the range will be 9 minus 1. So that would be 8. So that is how we get our range. So mas dali ra siya. When to use the range? The range is used when you have an ordinal data. Ordinal is more likely nakarank. Okay, rank ang ato ang data. Or you will have your results to people with little no knowledge of statistics. So mas dali masabtan nila kung range. Kaya naman, specific ka. Pero more likely in research, kung data information lang imong i-present, pwede siya. But in research, more likely, range is rarely utilized. Okay? That is, the range is rarely utilized in a scientific work, whereas it is fairly insensitive. Why? Because sa kadaghan nimo nga data nga naa or nga data nga naa, ang imo lang gikuha is ang duha ra ka score. How about the other? Okay? Kaya para halimbawa ni, two different sets of data but we have an equal range. Di ba? 9 and 1, upat ka 1, isa ka 9. So the range is still 8. But this data is 1 and 9, 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. But the range is still 8. Okay? And we already category you will notice nga kalain ba maura, but that's the reality nga dili sa kadaghan nato nga score gali nga naa, ang mahitabo is ang range is we only consider the highest and the lowest value. Mao nang insensitive siya with the other data. Semi-interquartile range is we simply have the difference of our Q3 and Q1. Q3 is we call that one as the upper quartile, the 75th percentile. Kumbaga halimbawa is we have to go back here with that data. So how many scores do we have? 4, 8, 1, 6, 7, 6. 2 ka 6, 2, 9, 3, 6, 9. How many scores do we have? 10. 75% of 10 is 7.5. So we have to count, but see to it that we will arrange the data from highest to lowest. So we could now count 7 and so it would be 7.5. So it would be around 8, between 8 and 7. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then followed by 8. So the quartile is between 6 and 7, between 6 and 8. So 6 plus 8 is 7. 14 divided to 7. So Q3 is 7. Nasabtan? So that's the upper quartile. 7. Then lower quartile will be 25% of 10 is 2.5. So it will be between 2 and 3. So we could now have the first data that we have is 1 followed by 2, then 3. So it is between 2 and 3. So therefore, that would be 2.5. So we get the difference between 2.5 and 7. That is 4.5 divided by 2. So we have 2.25. So therefore, our semi-interquartile range is 2.5 on this data. Saan naman itong data? Kani nga data. So the semi-interquartile range of the data given 48166293969 is 2.5. 2.25 I should say. Kaya the difference between 7 and 2.5 is 4.5, correct? And then 4.5 divided by 2 is 2.25. So therefore, the interquartile range of this data given is 2.25. That's how we determine our semi-interquartile range. So when to use SIR? SIR is often used when skewed data as it is insensitive to the extreme scores. So, pwede SIR itong gamiton. Kaya nga naman, insensitive ang ato ang SIR sa extreme score. So, it means to say, the location of our value for our SIR is not easily affected by the extreme values. Katong layo nakakatubang layo kay sa atuang data. Layo sa atuang sa atuang mean. Layo sa atuang measures of central tendency. Variance is defined as the average of the square divisions. So average, so it means to say individual score minus the mean is square. Okay? Kada isa. Okay. Niya isam na to ang tanang square niya i-divide na to og n. That's what we call as our variance. Or what do we do first is we have this one para maklaro na to sa to so to example ani. Wala. Na. Okay, so first it says we have to subtract the mean from each of the scores. Ayan, mo na ibot pasabutan na x minus the mean. Subtract. Then after mag-subtract, we'll have our so we'll go first with our data kanina na would I have the stop sharing for this one? I will just have the mag-open sa kong Excel kadali apas pa ka nato ni. Apas palagi na ba may oras? Na wala po yung Excel. Ano? I will just have to collect the scores na muna or ang data na to ganina. Di man mo. We have the 4, 8, 1, 6, 6. Ano? Ayop. 4, 8, 1, 6, 6. No. 6. 29369. 2, 9. Pieces. 6, 9. Window. Window ba? I have Excel share. Okay, so this is how we do with our standard deviation. So with our variance. So what should we do is we'll get muna the average of this one. So we'll have the auto sum. So we have that 154 divided by 10. That would be 5.4. So 5.4 is our average. Okay, so what should we do is we subtract each of the score from the mean. Okay, so we have that one as 5.4 minus 4, that is 1.4. Correct ba? Then 8, that would be 2.6, correct? 2.6, 4.4. That's how we do with that one. Subtract each of the score from the mean, or each of the score will be subtracted by the mean. So we have that one as 0.6. Correct ba? 6 minus 5.4, 0.6 or 0.6. 0.6. Copy. Then we have 3.4. Pakita ra, 3.4. Then we have 2.6, 3.6. And we have 2.4. Then we have 0.6 or 0.6. The next will be 3.6. And so after that one, ang ingon sa atong formula ganina, di ba, is square. So what should we do is we'll have to square this one. So we have to write that one as So may formula nga ato equals kani nga cell times itself. Di ba? Square times itself na siya.
Yes, sir.
Wala mga asterisk. Ani asterisk, shift, B2 again. Ayan. Uy, ayun. Hay. Wala man tayo ma-enter again. B2, then enter. Ayan, so 9.6. So para madali, we'll just simply to drag this one out. Ayan, so you have that one now. Kulang pa. Napay sa ubos. Ayan. So that's the square of each of the difference between the score and the mean. Each score. Then after ana, ang ingon dayon is katong symbol na tong murag i, ang ingon is isam. So we could now have the sum of it. So we could now have this one as autosum. And then enter. Ayan, 72. Then after that one, we have now 72. How many scores do we have? 10. So therefore, divided by 10. So therefore, our SD is, butang ta dire that our SD, that's the, the variance that our variance will be the 7.24. Na, anong, ayan, 7.24. Or more likely, kasagaran ng ginabuhat is pag mag-talk ta og variance, labi na kay sample, we deduct 1 from the total score, from the total number of scores that we have. So instead nga 10 ang atong i-divide, we divide that one by 9. So we change the value. So we could now have this one is equals kani divided by 9. We could now enter. So ayan. So that would be the our variance. Okay? So ang sunod na to sa variance is standard deviation. So para dili ta madugay, the same process will follow with our standard deviation. The only thing is we simply get the square root of the variance, and that is already our standard deviation. So our SD will just simply have the square root of this one. So we could now have equals SQRT, square root of that value. Uy, di niya dawaton. Again, equals. Asa man ang square root sa ating nga formula, SQRT raman dapat ang ingon. Insert equation. Dili siya mo dawat. Anong limang kunin dawaton o square root? SQRT dapat. Hindi siya mo dawat. Sama ko. Format, delete, sort, find, clear. Where are the formulas here? Equals, again, we'll try the SQRT. SQRT. Ito na. Square root of this one. siya mo dawat, equals. Where will be the formula? Where are you? Anara formulas there. So, insert function. Where are you? Logical, financial. Where are the square root of this one? Equals formulas, daytime, lockup, resource math, trigonometry. Ano nga mo siya logical? If not, financial, math, logical, math. Kani, narabasig mo na ni. Square root, okay. Of this one. Okay. And then enter. Ayan, so that is already our hello. Naka-present ko, wala pat. Naday, okay. Naday presentation. Okay na? So that's how our variance and standard deviation is being done. Questions? Time check. We still have how many minutes? 4?
Sir, naay comment si Trisel Grace Arangoso.
Unsa may gingon?
Siya, good morning sir. Pwede mo kayo og copy sa PPT sir after sa class kay dili kayo audible ang video sir.
Oo, pwede. Padala na ako.
Sir. Okay, sir. Thank you.
So any question
Thank
with
you,
our
sir.
standard deviation? How it is being done? Follow ra difference and then pag human difference i-square siya. Then i-add na ng square and i-divide siya of total number of score minus 1 because that's really the nasayop ang formula sa presentation. Pero pwede na po siya og walay minus 1. It could still be accepted. Because the value of the standard deviation is still around, 72, 7.2, that is still 2 point something, correct? Because it is more than 4. Wow, di man po siya kabot og 9, so therefore, mga 2 point something lagi siya. Okay, so I will have to go back with my PowerPoint presentation. Ayan, so that is how we do with our standard variance and standard deviation. Ayan, ano mo na igalio? Although dili lang siya mao nga data ang gikuha. So another data po siya. So ayan, so we could just simply try to have the difference of the mean. So we have ang mean nato is 42, pila man ni 1 2 3 4 5 6. So 42 divided by 6 is 7. So that is why you get 9 minus 7 2. Then we square, then we have the and then after this one we divide this one by 6. So ang variance is 12 divided 6 is 2. Then square root of 2, that will now become our standard deviation. Ayan. Di ba kung tanaw nimo ang lang sa ato ang that's the formula of the variance. So n minus 1 siya gali. Variance of the sample, ang ganina, variance of the population. So kung sample siya di ay minus 1, pag population, wala ay minus 1 ang n. And then ang standard deviation nato is we simply get the square root of this one, square root, then we have already our standard deviation. Kasi the relationship of the variance and standard deviation is that standard deviation is simply be the square root of the variance. And then variance is simply be the squared of the standard deviation. Kung nakakay standard deviation, imong square, variance. Pag nakakay variance, imong kuhag square root, standard deviation. That is what it means by the relationship. Okay, so I think we'll be only up to here because we have already the time. So absent, Miss Barrios, Fatima,
Yes,
we
sir.
are 46, so tulang absent. Si Suson, wala mabalik.
Nana, sir. Si
Ito may wala
Koan.
agad. De La Cruz,
De La Cruz. Yes, sir. Si Angel De La Cruz, sir. Wala.
De La Cruz, Orcolio,
Yes, sir. Wala po si Orcolio.
and the other one.
An?
Excuse me, si Orcolio is internet loss na siya, pero naa siya. Ang absent is Magtoles o kato si, si Angel.
Magtolis and De La Cruz ra wala.
Oo.
Ay, hello sir, excuse me. Good morning.
Naaman na si Magtolis do.
Late
Sir.
lagi ko sir, wala stable lang yung connection. Sorry
Wala
sir.
pa siya ka-join,
So,
sir.
kinsa may isa nga wala? Si De La Cruz o si Kinsa wala?
Si Entrada, sir. Isa, nakalimot ko sa name.
Kinsa si?
Entrada.
Si De La Cruz o si Entrada. Okay na?
Nakalimot. Sir.
Excuse me, si Entrada is excuse siya kay nakatulog siya baon sa ospital.
Yes, sir. Tama. Spokesperson ako, sir.
Di ba kay ngano may excuse man nga tuwa sa ospital nga wala day data niya, dapat naamong gudunta na siya.
Nag-message siya sa kuha, sir.
O niya si Orcolio sa ingon?
Internet loss, pero online sila, sir. Nagsige sila update sa kuha sa Messenger kay di gid sila ka-login, nag-screenshot pa gani sila silang screen.
Normally nga dili ka login kay wala man gud sa wala man siguro sila nagkuha data nila or unsa man naki-wifi ra sila, imposible di sila kasulod.
Or perhaps is
May-
sir,
Wala gyud
Mahina
wala
ka.
gyud load.
Inay, sir. Naa sila, sir, pero magwala-wala sila.
Depende po sa place, sir. Kay, ang signal.
Nga naman lagi nga mag-iyon man tag depende sa place nga kasayin man sila daan nga iyon ana. Di ba nag-iyon naman ko daan nga dapat before the time nga magkuhan is mangita na daan sila location nga kusog ilang signal daan ug asa sila dili kay side sila nga wala unya pero binti na mahimo na tong katarungan nga wala kay tungod sa location.
Lagi sa gi-announce naman ito ambot niya.
So ang wala gyud is nalapod gay isa ni out kisa may ni out na pod. Sige na, bye-bye. So we have Magtolis, De La Cruz, and Orcolio, correct? Although si Orcolio
Yes, sir, nasa Orcolio.
dili lang mo si Magtolis o sa ingon
Good morning sir.
naaba lagi si Magtolis dahil dili ito isa kisa to gingon si
Entrada.
Entrada.
Dili,
Gilantan
sir.
Entrada
daw to
although
siya.
nagatod og
Gikuan man siya.
Gilantan daw to siya.
Sir, akong nag-accident, sir. Si kuan na, sir. Si
De La Cruz yun.
De La Cruz o si Magtoles kay.
Naalagi
Ano,
si
sir?
Magtolis
Yes, sir,
si
pero
Silubia karon pa din nakasod si
oo, sir, karon pa yun siya, sir. Kaya, tapos mahuman na naman to, sir. So, listen po, sir. Unfair man sa uban po, sir.
Sige. Sige. Ano lang,
Pero, okay
i-note
siguro
lang
na-
kuan na Kung ibutang sa GC palihog, Hanilit. Sige, thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Bye-bye. See you this coming Thursday, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thursday, magkita ta, di ba?
Mag-take sa siguro tag pictures, guys.
Oh, sige, mag-take on pic.
Please,
dati-
please turn on your cameras.
Palihog, ikaw niya, ibutang lang sa GC kay wala ko ikuan, dili ko ka-print sa screen.
Yes, sir.
Di ko makakuha ng screenshot.
Muna ako man ang dili ma-open.
Hala pa nga. Mga gwapan yung karong adlaw oh. Or maayo og or maayo og filter.
True.
So,
Pwede di ba on, sir? Why ligo, sir?
sige. 1, 2, 3, smile.
Smile daw, ay.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, isa pa.
Oh, si Hani, kano sa akin mong sunod nga TikTok?
1, 2, 3, smile. Okay. Manan.
Sige. Bye-bye, salamat. See
Bye,
you.
sir.
Bye, sir.
Bye, sir.
Salamat,
Bye,
sir.
sir.
Bye, sir. Salamat.